Black Museum is the final episode of Black Mirror's fourth season. It follows Nish as she is given a tour of the remote Black Museum by Rollo Haynes. Rollo narrates three stories related to the displays in his museum, all of which he had a direct influence in. It is revealed that the third and final attraction, Clayton, a hologram of a black man who died on death row for a crime he may or may not have committed, is Nisha's father. She and her mother came to the Black Museum for revenge. In their final confrontation, Black Mirror uses quick cuts to show emotional stakes, high and low lighting to highlight racial tension, and camera angles to illustrate the shift in power dynamics between Rollo and Nish. Ultimately, Black Museum explores the ways in which Black people's pain and trauma is exploited and keeps them in a perpetual state of suffering. The final confrontation between Nish and Rollo functions as a form of catharsis in which the white man gets what he deserves and is reduced to nothing but his own cycle of suffering. More importantly, this scene shows the power of storytelling and the importance of reclaiming one's own narrative. Throughout the episode, Rollo is shown to be a charismatic salesman who has power and control over the narratives he tells. He spins two dark and interesting stories leading up to Clayton's background. He's quick to paint the picture of Clayton being the murderer of an innocent woman. While he doesn't say anything pertaining to race explicitly, the framing clearly draws on existing stereotypes of violent black men attacking the innocent white woman. Nish quickly unravels this narrative as the poison she had him drink earlier finally takes a hold of Rollo. Rollo quite literally chokes on his lies as he finishes telling his version of Clayton's story. As he sits there gasping for breath, Nish reclaims the narrative and shows how hopeful Clayton was in clearing his name, how his family remained by his side until the end, and how protests managed to hurt the Black Museum's attendance. But it's not enough to just poison Rollo. He needs to go through even a fraction of what her father went through. After a cut to black, signifying the death of Rollo's body, we cut to a close-up of him in the same chair Carrie was in when she was implanted in Jack's head. The shots of Rollo in this consciousness realm serve to show the loss of his voice, autonomy, and his power. Because he provided a service that condones white supremacy, he reduced Clayton's consciousness to a shell of himself. Nish forces him to experience the same lack of control and power. He looks small in this endless void of white, black, and red. He can speak, but no one can hear him, which effectively robs him of his ability to control the narrative. He can't move from the chair in the mental space, and he has no control over Clayton's body anymore. Even the shots cut away from him when he starts speaking to focus on Nish, showing the power that she now holds. The color of his clothing and the chair work to highlight his pasty complexion. It also shows that he is connected to the chair. He is confined to it, much like Clayton had been confined to his electrocution chair since his death. This scene is full of quick cuts between Rollo and Nish as she explains her plan, and Rollo sits in fear and anger. This builds momentum and gives the scene a feeling of anxiety and trepidation, while also mimicking a conversation, despite Nish and Rollo being unable to actually have one. The deep drum-like sound that plays throughout the scene, even underneath the suspenseful music that starts halfway through her speech, and slowly speeds up, heightens this anxiety until it finally releases with Clayton and Rollo's death. This mirrors Nish's anxiety as she pulls the lever, and the relief she feels once her father is free and Rollo has experienced a similar pain. The shots of Rollo in Clayton's head are brightly illuminated by the screen he looks past, which is rimmed with a bright white light. This is juxtaposed with the black and red space just beyond him, and even more so with the dark color palette in Nisha's shots. When we cut to Nish, she is surrounded by darkness. Not only does this highlight the racial difference between her and Rollo, but it shows her mental and emotional state. She is angry and vengeful. I think these shots in particular highlight the trauma she has been carrying leading up to this moment. Here she sits cross-legged with a toy next to her. Clayton's shadow is shown in the window. The framing here calls to mind the image of a young girl playing with her toys as her father watches her. Except this is a possibility that was robbed from her, as showcased by keeping Rollo's dead body in frame, more solid and real than Clayton's projection. The grim reality is that Nish is an adult, and the ghost of her father and the possibilities still haunt her. This shot in particular is repeated a few times in this scene. The camera is positioned on Clayton's side of the window. Nish is centered with Rollo's dead body on the left of the screen and the reflection of her dead father on the right. Notable here is how the lamp's position on top of Rollo and Clayton only illuminates Rollo's complexion. Clayton remains a shadowed figure. This shot shows the underlying racial commentary this episode is making. Nish is stuck between the fading image of her father and the white man who profited off of the spectacle of Clayton's torture. This shot encapsulates the trauma that has been haunting her leading up to this confrontation and the various ways in which Black trauma is used as entertainment. The first time Nish is illuminated by a path of bright light in the scene happens right after Clayton's body disappears. In going through with her plan and freeing her father from this prison, a new path has opened up to her. She can walk away without this burden and this trauma haunting her for the rest of her life. In reclaiming the narrative, Nish has opened up a new and brighter path for herself. Ultimately, Black Museum is about Nish taking control over her and her family's narratives in the face of white supremacy. While the ending seems to indicate that all is well and good, the bad guy is defeated, and Nish is triumphant in her plan, the episode maintains that reclaiming narratives does not remove the pain and trauma that has been inflicted. Her mother remains in her head, and the episode ends with Dionne Warwick singing, "Always there to remind me." The pain and trauma will always remain, especially for as long as Clayton's consciousness remains in those souvenirs. But Nish can still forge her own path ahead and free herself from being always on, always suffering.